Hi, and welcome to the Resilience Podcast. I'm Brad Hook, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Njabulo Sithole from our South African team. Njabulo, welcome to the Resilience Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited, and I feel very honored to be part of the bigger Resilience Institute global family. Thank you.
Absolutely, we are too. So I think for our listeners who haven't met you, perhaps you could give us just a quick background. How did you develop an interest in resilience? What did you study? What led you to connect with us?
I'm shaped by a number of things, by a number of experiences that have led me to take part in this journey. Firstly, I come from a family of 3 children, and I'm in the middle. And growing up, unknowingly to me, I think I've been exposed to experiences where my parents were sort of asking me or enabling me to be resilient. The number of responsibilities that I had to take on at an early stage, the role that I had to play, even though at the time it was gender-based, but it's what they knew best. But it helped set our practices, which is what we talk about a lot now. And I didn't know then that was the foundation. Fast forward, I studied psychology, yes. And in that journey, I remember just to, explore a little bit about, the question that you asked me. I was attending a post-traumatic stress disorder, a lecture, and the lecturer was exposing us to the experiences of the war veterans. And one of the key things that he mentioned there is that after the war, some soldiers, they adjusted easily to the environment. Of course, some exhibited, intense stress disorder symptoms, flashbacks, and everything. And he asked us a key question. What do you think was the difference that differentiated between, the two groups, those who adjusted well and those who battled? We were silent. And then he said, resilience. There was the first time in my life to hear about the word resilience. And it actually triggers something in me, is that if people after such traumatic experiences are able to adjust, and what helps them to adjust is this resilience, then I want this resilience as well. So fast forward, completed my studies in psychology, and further on, because the environment that you live in, it requires us to sort of have that blend. So my qualification is a blend of psychology and business. I also have a business qualification. And after having, gone through the business qualification, one of the assignments was to come up with a capstone project. And my capstone project was resilience. And I was looking at resilience in as far as entrepreneurship is concerned. So that's how I got into the journey. Then after having studied, I called quite a few people around the world, and I landed into Dr. Sven's lovely hands, and he welcomed me, and was very delighted to find out there's already a model out there that talks to, the ideals that I had in mind. That really shaped me. My experience with Dr. Sven shaped me in a sense that we're aligned in terms of, in this life, it's not only about the intellect. It's about the emotion, your feelings. It's about your soul. It's about your spirit. It's about your physical dimensions. How do you ensure that we incorporate all of this so that we live, the successful life that we all want. We all want it. The fulfilling life that we all. So all of those experiences, I think they've shaped me to be where I am today.
Mm-hmm. And we're so glad you found us. So tell me a little bit about the work you're currently doing in South Africa, bearing in mind that the context there is different. There are different challenges to what people are experiencing in other parts of the world. So maybe you could share a little bit about the type of work you're currently doing and some of the challenges that organizations particularly are facing in South Africa.
Where do I start? There are two parts to this. One is the work that you're doing, but also it's the impact that it's having on me. And I'm beginning to discover a lot about myself in terms of what I didn't know, in terms of what I expected. And I'm at a point where I'm just absorbing everything, and they say, knowledge is your wealth. And these corporates are teaching me, the people within those corporates are teaching me so much about their own, resilience strategies. And it's teaching me that there's no one size fits all. And it's teaching me that people have been through a lot and they're attached to those traumatic experiences, hence the behavior, since we have to be sensitive. So there's that part about me which I'm very conscious of. Looking at what we've been through, it's a story of two tales. I have been exposed to entrepreneurs, corporates, families, communities, just to bring a little bit of context, that have been battered by the looting, especially in KZN, where businesses unexpectedly were destroyed. So we talk of the VUCA environment, it's volatile, the environment is uncertain, it's complex, it's unambiguous. And I think that talks to the environment that is incomprehensible, because we just couldn't comprehend, what actually caused all of that. So those are the entrepreneurs that I've been talking to. Those are the corporates that I've been talking to who have suffered as a result of the looting. Not to end the context there, there's also the story of the flood. I'm sure we may have heard about Toyota, which has just opened about 2 months ago because of the flooding. Incomprehensible again. And it makes us to be anxious. What is next? And this is at the back of COVID-19. So that's the context. So we are dealing with corporates that are struggling with the external factors. And these external factors have such an impact on them. We are also struggling with our own environment, the economic environment in South Africa, which is very poor, I might say, at this stage, because of, the corruption crisis that we all know about, the leadership crisis that we all know about. So corporates and also, individuals within those corporates are battling with the number of external factors. Now, I said there are two ways of looking at that. So there are all these external factors. So there are corporates that respond and they say, what sort of interventions can we have in order to adapt to this? There is one group of corporates, but there are also corporates who say that the main issue is profitability now, and they cut their budgets to the core. And you find that people within those organizations, they are battling because the main thing is about being productive at the back of, having experienced all these traumas. Okay, now let's deal with this group, the first group, where you have management that says that we understand the external environment. And this is where I say to them, and I take my head off to them, and I say, it goes back to what you can control and what you can't control. And would like to work with organizations that understand that there are things that we can't control, but what can we control? And together we can craft the plan of, the competencies that we need in order to make sure that we are still having a fulfilling life as employees. We are still enjoying, we are still adapting, we are still agile to the various circumstances that are beyond us. I'll make an example. It excites me because, I mean, just a few weeks ago, we had an engagement with the Reserve Bank of South Africa. And this
Wow.
is it's very exciting. And this is one institution that falls into this group. And this is what they did, Brett. They have a framework. That's number one for me. So, which tells me that the tone comes from the top. And it's very important, in our journey as we engage these companies, that there is an alignment, because us as a resilience institute, we also have a plan, we have a pathway, we have a framework that is, and it's so important, and it makes it so much easier if there's an alignment with an organization that already has a framework that talks to resilience. So they have agile, resilient and agile competency for all central bankers. And that is where we fit in. And they took us through their framework to say that we expect to have balanced bankers, central bankers. And this is where, we as an organization have put a budget on it. So there is that experience that is exciting, that says that this is how we respond to the crisis. And those are the stories that we want to hear, because it goes back to, I can't control this, but this is what I can control. And when you look at the whole framework of the Reserve Bank, they have actually, categorized this in terms of leadership. There is agile and resilient, but also employees. With other organizations, you find a bit of both. It's either they focus to employees, that it's employees that needs to be resilient and agile, and nothing is said about the leadership. Or else it's just, we just want a webinar for leaders, and that's just it. But here you get a little bit of both. So that is, the current experience that I've had, and the response that we are getting, from some of the corporates. And the key thing that makes us really excited, about this, is that they are looking at us as long-term partners. And it's very important that when we engage clients, that, we get clients that understand the effectiveness of making sure that the programs that they have in place, they talk to, the overall well-being, whether it's leadership and whether it's employees. And then there's also the other group. I won't talk much about the other group, but there's that other challenge as well, is that, you do have groups. Sometimes you'll get a call, to say that, okay, can you quote us, on this? We do a quote, but sorry, but, we have no budget. And that talks to the profitability that I mentioned, that there are issues with profitability as companies are cutting off seriously their budgets.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think it's so aligned. I think that we have our best results as Resilience Institute when we work with organizations who believe, like we do, that business grows when people grow. I'm interested to know, and instead of, trying to squeeze more out of people, how can we look after them? Because then productivity emerges. But I'd love to hear from your perspective, what does a resilient leader look like in South Africa? Because you do have different challenges. There are environmental challenges, there are political challenges, there's, the looting and unrest, which is at the back of your mind. How does a leader stay resilient in themselves, and how can they create resilient teams in this context? What are some of the competencies?
Yeah, quite an important question, because I think when we started as a Resilience Institute, there was this challenge of, we need data, concrete experiences from corporate South Africa that can actually back up, this idea of what is a resilient employee, what is a resilient leader. Although we do have a framework, but there was that call for in what context. what we are experiencing, and this is based on the engagement with the various corporates, there's an issue of the cultural aspect when you go to different corporates. You will find that when it comes to a resilient leader, culturally, there is, there are a lot of idioms and there are a lot of philosophies around, especially Ubuntu. So a resilient leader is seen as that person who has those competences or character traits that talk to kindness, that talk to being compassionate. And let me dig deep and put it in the context of the work context. We are at a stage, as I've outlined on the context, where we have people who are traumatized, battered, so they are in a different mindset. Some are bitter, some are feeling lonely. A resilient leader in that institute, in my experience, in terms of our engagement, is someone who is able to say, what are you going through? Can I understand what you're going through? I can see that, in terms of your productivity, you are failing. So it's that type of a leader who will be able to listen. Not only listen, but also in their choice of decisions and plans, there's compassion embedded in there. Is it possible that maybe whilst you are going through this, maybe take time off a little bit, recuperate, and whilst you are recuperating, the understanding of the different aspects that helps people to be resilient and to come back forcefully. Make sure that you get enough sleep. Make sure that you do other things that are of interest to you. So a leader that understands that people need to be listened to. A leader that understands empathy in the deepest sense. There is putting myself in the shoes of the other person. So those are the values of Ubuntu. A leader that understands that I am serving, the leader that understands that if therefore I'm saving, therefore it means that it's not only about me, it's also about the other. And how is the other feeling? And what are the thoughts that are troubling the other? How best can I help the other? And it is coming out, Rob. When I teach Connect, for instance, I spend a lot of time on Connect. Bounce is key, grow is key, but I spend a lot of time on Connect. Because, Connect, this is where we can look at the different aspects of emotional intelligence. Of course, we still have to, look at it within the framework of emotion. But the key competences that I focus on, I need to make sure that I talk to those cultural values of Ubuntu, that you become a kind person to your employees. You become a compassionate leader. You become empathetic towards your employees and understand that those are your superpowers and it helps you that which you want to achieve, monetarily, indirectly, because of productivity, because of engagement, because now you can see people for who you are. I can add something else as well. There's this question about who you are, and it talks to, self-awareness. Understand yourself, understand your thoughts, be intentional about your thoughts as well. But what I'm finding, coming back to your question in terms of our experiences in corporate South Africa is, whose do you belong? It's coming up a lot as a competency There is key, there is a leader. You also need to understand that people like to belong.
Yeah.
I belong to my family. I belong to my friends. I belong to my company. I belong to my colleagues. How then, as a leader, do I ensure that people get a sense of belonging within their organizations? And this has been illuminated by COVID, where now we have different modes of work, hybrid environment. Are we working together? Am I working alone? A combination of all of those. And a leader that is conscious of all of those components will understand that if I work alone all the time, I lose my sense of belonging. How then do I ensure that there's that blend? So corporate South Africa is really becoming conscious of, I think, having been brought up in the psychology, family, understanding people, putting yourself in the shoes of, those are becoming key consequences, over and above, the technical skills that people have, because we are now realizing that I can be burst, as an engineer, I can be burst as an accountant, but I also need a balance of the skills that help me generate the positive emotions about my job. And how do I have the skills to do that? Because nobody teaches an engineer or an accountant or marketer. The focus is on the technical aspect, the processes around that, and how do I do that? So we need leaders who are very conscious of those soft skills, which help us really to be adaptive and agile. It's a long answer, but it's you've touched on a point that that really makes my job meaningful about getting into corporate, because those competences are very meaningful. That's what gives us life satisfaction, over and above that, I'm able to get across the line in terms of profitability and budget. But I also need to know that whilst I'm doing that, am I enjoying it? Is it meaningful for me? Because all of those competences and help us to engage fully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. It reminds me of an exercise I've done a few times in workshops where you get participants to think about a leader who has really changed your life, has been a mentor. Now, write down some of the skills or attributes that describe that leader. And there's maybe one or two technical skills on a whiteboard full of emotional competencies. They were kind, they were compassionate, they were empathetic. And I think this is it, when the world is uncertain, feeling that sense of belonging, it really gives you this foundation, the stability that you need to go in and focus your attention on what matters. You touched on this idea of Ubuntu, and I remember an amazing quote. I can't remember it offhand, but I think it was by Desmond Tutu, who said that Nelson Mandela personified this idea of Ubuntu. Maybe you could just describe it a little bit more. Give us, for those who are not in South Africa, haven't encountered that term, what are some of the key elements of Ubuntu?
Yeah. Maybe just to flesh it a little bit, because
Please.
Ubuntu, and it also broadens into, because umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. You are because I am. It's a concept, a philosophy that illuminates the important factor of the other. Whilst I'm an individual, whilst I have to do things to ensure that as an individual, I'm satisfied, but there is not enough in the Afrocentric philosophies. You are because of the other. So if you understand that you are because of the other, so your focus is also on the other. And what is it about the other? Giving yourself space to understand the other. giving yourself space and knowledge about the other. And one of the things I like when you're referring to workshops is I'm fleshing out, the important aspects of the other. What did you do today for the other? If you can just track your day. So when you're looking at empathy and it will be during the unpacking of the Connect module, an exercise around empathy. If you can just think back, what did you do for the other? Just name 3 things. And then it becomes an exercise within the organization. If I'm able to think about the 3 things that I've done for the other, and the next person does that. So the whole organization, you find that it's embedding empathy because we are now making it a conscious decision to be empathetic. And we are now practicing empathy. So Ubuntu is mainly about, I am because of the other, my well-being is important, but also kindness of the other, compassionate of the other is equally important. So whilst there are so many things that I can do for myself, what else can I do? And also, this helps in as far as teamwork is concerned, because you are now thinking about your team. As a leader as well, there's another greeting that the Zulu people use, which is also embedded in this Ubuntu concept. Sawubona. Sawubona. So you find that in the cultures, the Ubuntu concept is embedded in how we greet each other. The attributes in the idioms. What we do. Behavioral and all of that. So if I say Sawubona, I'm saying I see you.
Can I try the response?
Yeah. Sawubona.
Sapila.
Yes, I'm well. Yes.
There you go. Okay.
So I see you. How are you? Giyaphila. Yes. So, you will find that just from that greeting, you are actually practicing Ubuntu. And you're saying that for somebody maybe who's not exposed to this term. So it's found in various aspects, behaviorally, and also the attributes that we exhibit in our greetings. Ubuntu is found, in the way that we treat the other. Going back, some of the names also, they exhibit that, they portray this idea of Ubuntu. I can say, for instance, my name. My name is Njabulo in Zulu, which means the mother of happiness.
Beautiful.
Mother of joy. So if you are given that name, Njabulo, you need to understand that which you do must follow your name. How then do you ensure that there is joy? Not to say that you should be joyful all the time, It becomes that question of your focus. Do you focus on the negative or the positive? And I say that at times when I'm doing workshops that I make it a conscious decision that I live up to my name. And making a conscious decision means that I lost my brother, which is something that was very traumatic to the family. But how then do I ensure that, I generate meaning out of that? I generate positive, emotions out of that. And that goes back to the name that was given to me by my parents. That how then do you influence other people? Through your name, you can influence other people. And your name has joy embedded in it. And that's Ubuntu. So you can influence people through your name by being conscious of what it means, because it's got a meaning. So I hope, with this long answer, for someone who's listened, we say, what incorporates Ubuntu? Mainly it's not only about the individual, it's the other. And when you think about the other, what is it that you can do to ensure that the other also achieves a sense of well-being? Is it kindness? It's being compassionate, elements of appreciation, gratitude. As a leader, it talks to when you're doing your performance appraisals, is there balance between, the negative, and when you're exhibiting Ubuntu, can you be compassionate and understand, where that person is coming from, whilst giving them what they need to hear? So you learn, to find meaning and incorporate it in the daily processes of an employee, and also to you as a leader. Have I been appreciative of people's experiences? Have I exhibited, gratitude? Have I been empathetic? And all those are components of Ubuntu. So it's things that we've spoken about, but I need to define them in a cultural way so that people can find something that they can relate to.
It's a beautiful approach that I think can help anyone, not just organizations in South Africa. That idea of what can I do for the other? It's almost the opposite of what you see on social media, where people are just in conflict with each other, and there's polarization and there's hostility. And, when people are dealing with adversity, they go down the spiral into fight, flight, freeze. I think considering what can I do for the other is a way to nudge yourself back up that spiral. I have a question for you. How are young people doing in South Africa? We live in a changing world full of technology, which adds another dimension to our environment. You see this anxiety epidemic around the world. How are young people managing in a VUCA, a very real VUCA environment in South Africa?
Sure. Another important question. Again, I like to look at things from different perspectives. There is a rise and an uprising of young people who are very conscious of their well-being. I'm actually amazed. I actually marvel of some of the podcasts that have come up. And, it's the youth, it's young people, they're talking, how do you center yourself? What are your well-being practices? Previous Mr. Africa started in a Wellness Monday, and she had followers of people following her. You have that eagerness, that desire, their consciousness to do something about themselves in order to make sure that they're successful. And it's talking to everything that we talk about the Resilience Institute. It's talking to physical well-being. It's talking to emotional well-being. And largely spiritual well-being. There's just an uprising of that we need to be conscious of our spirit and define it in a way that people can understand. Because there's, ancestral spirits. There's religious people who talk of, Christianity, and they get, their spirituality there. And then you have a group of people who find their spirituality from just being in nature and, being present and finding meaning in all of those aspects. Mental well-being is key. There's a lady called Ubuntu. She's got a podcast with so many followers. It's about wellness. The wellness. It's wellness and wisdom. Yes, there is also another lady, Madai. Forgotten her name. I think it's Madai. And her podcast is also about living well. You have the group of people, and it's very impressive. And they're giving us a run for our money because they're talking, resilience. They're talking psychological concepts, and it's very encouraging. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But sadly, whilst we have that uprising, it said it's important that it's how you respond to the different storms instead of reacting to the different storms. And I think this is spearheaded by the number of suicides that we've had in the country, especially prominent artists. Depression, artists who have come out, publicly to say that I'm depressed. Whilst it's good for psychology in the sense that the stigma around, mental illness, in a way, is being alleviated, At the same time, it just shows you the magnitude, of mental illness that we have. It just tells you the magnitude of how depressed and how anxious people are. So we do have anxious people, anxious youth, and you find that in organizations. And there was one organization when we were doing, our resilience diagnostic, and I think you are aware of the data, where it indicated that the group of the youth, I think it was about 25 to about 35, they showed low resilience. Whilst that data was a reflection of just one corporate, and I think it's a reflection of a broader society, we do have youth that is battling, struggling with a number of challenges that are posed to us. Social media, as you have mentioned, has got a role to play in a sense that different realities. I have this reality, but social media is giving me another reality. Yes. And it goes back to, how we respond to different things. Other people would say, reflect on it and say, this is where I am as a person, and this is my journey. And look at where they've been and how far, they've come. But other people, they need help. They need assistance to get to that point, because what they see, they take it as a bad reflection of them. And it's very sad. We get that in organizations, and unfortunately, it becomes a referral process when you pick it up on the resilience diagnostic, that as management, we are sensitizing you that there's a discrepancy between the youth and your older groups. Can we have focused, webinars that will deal with these issues? Other organizations, they'll take it up and have focus, but we also recommend that once we know that as, a collective, that there are these issues, be mindful and maybe do referrals, be conscious as a leader when you are having your one-on-one talks, and refer people, because now we know that it's there, it exists. Because people's previous experiences in terms of openness, differs based on their beliefs. People ahead, they may have opened up, and maybe somebody did not take them seriously, and it just deepened their wounds. So you're also dealing with different layers when it comes to people's beliefs, which is quite key on this journey. That whatever that you're doing, it's centered on people's beliefs, it's centered on people's values. Whilst in our modules, we deal with engagement and helping people find meaning. It's finding meaning through flow, but also it's finding meaning in what you are doing. Is my job giving me meaning? Is what I'm doing giving me joy? And am I really feeling that I'm using my personal strengths here to help me achieve that which I want to achieve? Do I understand my personality? Do I understand my beliefs? And if my personality is not aligned, to what I'm doing, hence there's that mismatch between my skill and the challenges. Am I able to articulate that? Am I aware of that so that my leader can take action And am I aware of my own personal strengths? How do I use my personal strengths in order to make sure that I find meaning? So as facilitators and dealing with the youth, in a very important question, we become meaning makers as well.
Yes.
So to help them, find meaning, because you do get that. You talk about the VUCA. I've just heard about the bunny word as well. I don't know, Brett, how many of these acronyms we're going to get. And I'm still trying to, to find myself in this bunny environment, that it's an anxious word. It is true, it's an anxious word. I'm not saying, for me, I'm not saying we should throw out the VUCA, because we still live in an uncertain world. We still live in a copyless world. So I do pick up some of the things, but it doesn't mean we should throw away VUCA and now it's now bunny, it's no longer VUCA.
I'm with you.
It is an anxious. It is an anxious. So I'm just making reference to the bunny world in terms of the question with the youth, that yes, I'm feeling, but how do I as a leader, make sure that I help the youth to find meaning in what they're doing, and how do I, as also my own, personal self, or my own self, find meaning in what I'm doing, because you can find meaning at work, and that's what we try and facilitate through flow. You find
yes,
in your team, you find meaning in your organization. What are the organizational values, and are you aligned to those values? What are the programs within the organizations that are aligned to what you value? Do you participate in all those? So you find meaning in those areas. You find meaning in your family. Your family gives you meaning. You get a sense of it. You find meaning in your friends. You find meaning in your colleagues. So it becomes that conscious decision that once we understand that we have these two extremes of people who are conscious of how they need to respond to the various challenges and find ways of adapting. We also have the other extremes of troubled youth, the youth that is battling, and it needs solutionists, people who can help them find meaning. And then it also becomes our role when we are facilitating the resilience. And that's why I like, the whole resilience concept, because it's multifaceted.
yes.
If it means that it's no one size fits all, you just need to understand your own personal economics of happiness. Because resilience also means to relax. I don't know where this notion comes from, that, it's go. That's
not resilience.
No, not in our concept.
Mm-hmm.
Not in our concept. Actually, it's our resilience says that make time for yourself.
Exactly.
That's how you bounce.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that, what are your sources of vitality? Is it sleeping? Is it food? Are you aware of all of those things? Is it physical well-being? Just choose something that will help you, find meaning. So we are meaning makers in a way.
I love that idea. And you are such a meaning maker. I can just see it in action. You as a force for positivity and joy and happiness in the work that you do. And I think that's reflected in our latest global report. We'll put a link in the show notes. Performance requires care. Every elite sports team knows this. You can't just perform without the rhythms of performance or flow, recovery. And in fact, our founder's new book is called Rhythm. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. Thank you, Njabulo. Please do connect with Njabulo if you are looking for a meaning maker for your organization. And I'll see you in the next Resilience podcast. Thanks, Njabulo.
Thank you so much.